Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
/x/. What do you know about so-called reality glitches?
About 6 years ago, I worked at a video store. A small place, one story with a main room where the movies and checkout counter were, a stock room where we kept snacks and stuff, and the office. It was part of a little strip mall in a quiet suburban area. There was nothing really unusual about the store, except for the window in the stock room. It was a short, broad, rectangular window, extremely high up on the wall. The kind you can't really reach until you have one of those hooks on a pole to manipulate the latch. Half the time you couldn't even see it, because it was hidden behind boxes of popcorn or candy. But whenever the stocks ran low, you could finally tell it was there. The thing about the window was that when you looked up through it, you were looking at a view that couldn't have possibly been there. You'd look through it, and you could see the sky and what looked like the corner of a large gray office building with rows of tinted windows, and there wasn't a building like that anywhere in the neighborhood. The other thing was that no sound ever came through it, even though the wall it faced was on a fairly busy street. The stockroom as a whole was weirdly silent, and no one really liked to be in there alone for long. Still, that wasn't as strange as the view. You could see dim and blurred people moving behind the glass on the office building, and there would be a few lights turned on later in the evening, which is how we figured it was an office building and not some kind of optical illusion. We couldn't really tell what the people in the building were doing either, which sort of freaked us out more. I suppose they were probably just doing typical office-related tasks, but given that they were in a building that didn't exist on the other side of the wall, who the hell knows?
Reality glitches? I've got a pretty fucked up one. I started working at my current employer about 3 years ago. Just in the parking lot of my office, there's a 7-Eleven, and it's always been really convenient, but there was one thing which kind of stood out as odd about it. There was a payphone just outside the 7-Eleven. Now, I had never seen a payphone before, growing up in a generation where, by the time I was in junior high, cell phones were getting more and more common in daily usage. It was an odd bit of an artifact left over from a time long ago. Fast forward a year, I'm working midnights now on the same help desk, and the payphone is still there. I go over to 7-Eleven one night, and as I pass by, it rings. I jump, as all the times I had passed by that 7-Eleven, it never once rang. My curiosity got the best of me, and as it continued to ring, I picked it up. I said, "Hello? Is anyone there? Hello? Okay, I'm hanging up now." As I go to hang up, I can hear someone say something on the other line, but it's too late. I hung up. It was odd, but I shrugged it off. 3 months later, I'm walking to 7-Eleven again, past the payphone, when it once again rings, and this is where it gets weird. I pick it up and say, "Hello?" At the exact same time, I hear someone on the other end go, "Hello?" It sounds familiar, though. It sounds like my voice, not a recording, but my actual voice. I pause, kind of taken aback. I'm completely silent. "Is anyone there?" The other voice says. Definitely my voice. "Is anyone there? Hello? Okay, I'm hanging up now." I collect myself, realizing what's happened. I go to yell out, "Wait, no, stop!" But it's too late. The person hung up. 3 days later, the payphone was taken out.
I was coming out of the air terminal at the Air Force base where I work when I heard Retreat come over the loudspeaker. I came to attention as Retreat played, and when the national anthem started, began my salute. Now, I'm not actually the world's most patriotic guy, so really I'm going, come on, come on. Jesus, we have the longest national anthem in the world. And I notice a couple of guys in the parking lot smoking and leaning on a car. Then I notice a couple of cars driving down the road in the distance and see another officer walking to his car. None of these things should be occurring during retreat. Suddenly, I realize I'm not hearing retreat at all, and it stops. But it was absolutely real to me. The tinny sound it makes coming out of the public address speakers, the hiss of the old recording, everything.
On December 9th, 2009, I was driving home from my buddy's house at about 1 in the morning. It's only about half a mile between our houses, and I was about to turn onto my street from the main road. So I checked the clock, 12:42 a.m. Suddenly there was a bright white light that blinded me for a second, and I was driving down an abandoned, icy road with heavy snowfall all around me. I couldn't see 100 feet ahead, so I turned on the high beams and saw a yellow sign that had a sharp right turn symbol on it. As soon as I saw this, I noticed a wooden fence behind the sign. I was doing 40 miles per hour and about 100 feet away from the fence, so I started pumping the brakes and tried to turn the wheel, but ended up sliding into a ditch full of snow and almost hit the fence. It took me a half hour to get out, past midnight, in the dead of winter during a storm. I was pretty freaked out. Long story short, I looked at the clock right after I stopped sliding. It said 12:46 a.m. A few weeks later, I went back and found the spot I crashed. I didn't know where the fuck I was when I crashed. So I checked on Google Maps and found out it was a minimum driving distance of 6 miles. In 4 minutes. Do the math. I would have had to have been going an average of 90 miles per hour on icy roads in a city with 40 miles per hour speed limits to make it there in 4 minutes. It just doesn't make sense.
My father and godfather experienced this one year when we were camping. I was 16. They went stargazing at a site not far from the cabin. I knew exactly where. I went out to find them when I noticed they'd been out way past prime time for stargazing. All their shit, including my godfather's extremely expensive equipment, was still out there. They were not. No tracks leading away, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. There were still fresh beer cans sitting out. I stuck around out there until daylight, but they didn't come back. When I eventually headed back to the cabin, I found them frantically searching for my godfather's stargazing equipment. I thought they were drunk at first, but they weren't. They were genuinely unsure about where they'd been and what had happened, wearing the same clothes they'd left in. When I showed them to the spot they had been in the night before, they said they couldn't ever remember leaving. They said that one moment they were drinking and setting up, the next they were back at the cabin. My godfather got all crazy and started searching for signs that they'd left/gotten drunk/been drugged and dragged off. Nothing. He's a way better tracker than I ever will be, and he found no sign of any comings or goings. If it was a prank, it was a goddamn elaborate and well-arranged one. If not, then what the fuck? You don't leave $900+ equipment just laying around out there for a fucking joke on a 16-year-old kid.
I have a minor time skip event from a number of months ago, last year easily. My watch, my alarm clock, and the computer clock are all set to the same time, down to the second. They don't all tick over at the same rate, thanks to clockworks, programming, and slowly failing batteries. But it does take many months for them to begin to separate beyond a second or so. I like to walk. It helps me think. I hike my ass to the shops from my place regularly, once or twice a week easily. It is roughly 1.5 kilometers or a mile down a valley and up a ridgeline, short cutting through a number of overgrown bushland reserves. It is quite pleasant, and on a clear day, I can make out the city skyline, a little over 150 kilometers away on the coast in some places. I checked my watch before I left, hiked my ass up and back, lost in my own thoughts for a while. When I got back, my watch was 5 minutes and 30 seconds slower than every other clock in the house. That struck me as a little odd. The battery isn't failing yet, hell. It has been over a year and it is still going strong, and I know they were the same when I left. So, how exactly did I manage to slow down my local time?
Wow, this thread has potential. Actually, I've never posted on /x/ before, and I've only told one person of this little glitch. When I was about 9, I was staying with my grandmother a few weeks in the summer. The previous summer we went to this cool shop closer to the mountains and bought bug fossils and geodes and shit. So this time I was at her house. I remembered that I had used a butter knife to pluck out all the red gem things from the geode. They looked like small pomegranate seeds, and put them in a plastic box used for sewing needles. So, while everyone was playing outside and my grandmother was minding the kids, I wandered into her sewing room and found the little plastic box in the drawer where I left it. I was so eager to show them off to my friends, but to my 9-year-old brain, the tiny closing snap was impossible. I really couldn't open that thing. It was like it was glued. I held it to my thigh and pressed my palm downward on the thing, and it snapped open. My little red gems, about 5 to 10, scattered on the ground. And I found none of them. The sewing room was crowded with boxes, and I thought to check under the dresser too, but I never found a single one. I was baffled, and never brought it up. One more coming up. Also, when I was 10 or 11, I was staying at the same grandmother's house when one night I was watching movies in the den with my brother. I suddenly noticed that I had left my plastic terrarium with my turtle out in the backyard by the pond. I needed to get it because my dad was going to pick us up in the morning to take us home, and I was afraid he'd take my turtle away if he found that I was irresponsible. The backyard was big and dark, especially further back by the pond, under a giant mulberry tree. My brother and I turned on the patio light, which hardly penetrated any darkness but for on the patio, and he watched me walk over to find the turtle by the dark water. There was also a big wild garden that looked creepy to a 10-year-old in the night. I stepped slowly under the mulberry tree, and suddenly I saw white. It was like I suddenly shut my eyes, but saw white. Immediately, giving me only time to silently shake my head, 10 to 20 crows squawked at once and almost gave me a heart attack as they all fled the tree. I ran back inside and told my brother. He had no clue what I was talking about. I actually brought this story up with my brother a few years ago, but I was saying that I remembered it was a dream. Then he reminded me of the whole turtle situation and that I tried to tell him what happened. As he recalled it, "You said that you just felt like you went blind suddenly and then a bunch of birds were all over you." He was like 6 at the time and he doesn't remember shit. In before, how convenient. Anyway, those were my first 2/x/ posts. Am I/x/?
Not sure if it counts, but this same general thing happened on 3 separate occasions, though I only remember 2 of them vaguely. The first time it happened, I was in 2nd grade or so. I went over to a friend's house, and we decided to watch a Scooby-Doo animated movie. We turned off the lights and watched on his big TV. When it was over, he turned on the lights. Then I looked down and noticed my legs were coated in dried blood. I hadn't felt a thing before, but it looked like I had bled a hell of a lot everywhere. Even weirder, after I had scraped off all the blood, I found that there were only 2 or 3 very small cuts, But the truly odd thing was that these were underneath where some of the dried blood was, meaning it would have had to bleed up. The second time this happened, I had just gotten Pokemon Ruby or something. I was playing it as much as I could until my parents called me for dinner. I sat there as long as I could so I could save. And then once I was able to turn the Game Boy off, I looked down and noticed my legs were bloodied once again. And just like last time, the dried blood seemed to have crept up my leg. I don't remember the other time at all, but I distinctly remember there being a third time.
Okay, let me try this again. Every time I try to post this, it gets separated from this thread. I was a nobody in grade school, very quiet, had few friends, and there were periods of time that I had no friends. I sometimes felt that I could disappear and nobody would know. I've had this sensation of being unseen/invisible or non-existent several times in my life, but one specific example kind of freaked me out. In 9th grade English class, everybody had to write a paper on Animal Farm. Loved that book. The teacher made everybody trade papers and read them out loud. A girl on the opposite side of the class got mine. Coincidentally had a crush on her. Sometimes I write my T's like F's. She thought that I wrote feech. She pronounced it like fetch, instead of teach. I spoke up and said that it is my paper, and I meant to write teach. Nobody reacted to what I just said. The teacher asked whose paper it is. The girl said that it is my paper. The teacher looked around, looked past me, and said, with a confused look on her face. I spoke up, maybe she didn't hear me. It's my paper, Mrs. Insert teacher's name here. It's been 15 fucking years, man. I can't remember it. I meant to write teach. Nobody reacted. The teacher said to the girl, "Continue reading." I spoke up even louder, practically yelling at Mrs. teacher's name. That was my paper. I meant to write teach. The teacher didn't react to me yelling. The girl continued reading my paper. I looked around to see if anybody else heard me. Nobody reacted to me practically screaming in an otherwise quiet classroom. Nobody looking at me or even acknowledging that I exist. Nobody making eye contact with me. I've had this happen to me multiple times throughout my life, but I could always chalk it up to excessive ambient noise or multiple people talking. But this classroom was dead quiet as I was almost shouting and nobody even looked at me.
Not sure if this counts, but here goes. When I was 6, I noticed that the front of my calf on my left leg is much smaller than the one on my right, like someone had taken a sizable chunk out of it. At the time, I jokingly asked my parents if they knew what had happened because I sure didn't. My mom tried to change the subject while my dad sat stone silent with a blank look on his face. Fast forward to about a month ago, I had to get a physical for a new job, and the doctor, giving me the exam, notices the leg thing, too. He asks me if I had any surgeries or childhood accidents that would explain it. When I tell him I have no idea, he offers to have it x-rayed. Doc later shows me the x-rays of my leg, and as he's going over the medical stuff, he asks me why I never mentioned being in an accident. I ask him what he's talking about, and he shows me a photocopy of my family's car we had when I was about 4, all ripped to hell, and a shot of me on a stretcher being loaded into an ambulance. My left leg had been severed slightly above the ankle, and the fact that it could be reattached had been seen as a minor miracle at the time. My question is this: if all this really happened, why don't I remember any of it? Why do my parents to this day deny anything happening? According to records, I spent the better part of a year in the hospital recovering and relearning how to walk. Not something I'd imagine you're likely to forget.
I was in school. I was 17 or maybe 18. I had one of those Bic pens in my hand and I was really bored in class, so I started hitting the pen against the table. A bored friend sitting next to me started watching me. Eventually, a part of the pen broke and it flew away a couple of meters away. I followed the broken piece with my sight. Immediately after it landed on the floor, I looked at my pen and it was intact. Afterwards, I looked at my friend and he had a really confused expression on his face. We both looked back at the pen and asked each other, "What happened?" I left the pen on my table and went to look for the piece that was supposedly broken. It was there. I picked it up and went back to my place. My friend and I started talking about it. We never knew what happened. What do you think about it? I don't know if I missed anything about the story. If you have any questions, ask, and maybe I will remember something I omitted.
The fact that two of you were watching has something to do with it.
It was a green pen. We told many people about it, but no one believed us. Also, we were sitting in a certain way that no one else could have seen that event. I always used to sit next to the door, but not facing the whiteboard, 90 degrees clockwise facing the wall, with the other wall just behind me. There was just another spot in that place, and random people used to sit there. I haven't talked about it in a long time, because I haven't seen this guy in a lot of years, but I plan to do it and ask if he remembers. We did for years, but I don't know if he still does.
My mother told me that she is convinced she lived the same day twice when she was a kid, kind of like a Groundhog Day type scenario. The first time it was a normal day, of course. The second time she said she noticed odd stuff, almost straight away. Her parents, my grandparents, of course, having the exact same conversations, the same thing on TV as the day before, etc. She got really freaked out when her aunt came around and said she had a surprise. She already knew what it was. She told her, "It's an apple pie, and your daughter helped you make it, isn't it?" Amazed at the accuracy of my mother's guess, she opened it to reveal that she was right. My mother became hysterical and started crying. I could understand why a child would. This would be a terrifying thing to happen. She tried to explain her situation to her parents, but they just thought she was being silly. She told them she knew what was going to happen. She said that shortly, the child of the woman who brought along the apple pie would come along looking for her mum, and that she'd be wearing a red dress. Several minutes later, that is exactly what happened. My mum said that she spent the rest of the day in her room, scared and upset. The next day was different once again, and everything went back to normal. That's the way it was told to me.
Once when I was a little kid, about 8 or so, my father took me to the park. There was only one other kid there. He was a little boy about my age. There was nothing strange or spectacular about him. He was just a kid like me. I spent what felt like hours, but was probably only half an hour to an hour, playing with him. All the while, we were in view of my father, who was sitting on a bench watching me. I would look over at him occasionally and smile. When it was time to go, my father called, "Derpina, it's time to go home, honey." I ran to him, but hesitated to get in the car. "Can I say bye to my friend first?" "What friend?" "That kid I was playing with." I turned to point him out, but alas, the playground was empty. But there was this boy and... Now, honey, don't be silly. You can't let your imagination run away with you like that. That little boy was all I could think about on the ride home.
Got one sort of like this. When I was a kid in 4th grade, or 5th maybe. I was sitting on the bus, talking to some friends in the seat next to me. I was sitting alone. Onto the bus steps, a girl I've never seen before. At a stop we've never stopped at before, had I been paying attention. I would have tried to keep track of it. She gets onto the bus without saying a word and sits next to me. I've never seen this girl before. She's got no backpack or anything, and she looks a little old to be on an elementary school bus. Hair black as midnight, skin paler than any I've ever seen. But no one says a word. My friends keep talking to each other, leaving me be. I start to get a weird feeling as soon as she sits down. It's like she's a barrier between me and the rest of the world. I just have this cold feeling in my chest. She never moves, never says a word, just sits there. And when the bus gets to school, she gets up and gets off. As soon as she's off the bus, she's gone. Not distant, not hiding in a crowd. Gone. Never saw her again, and no one else seemed to remember her. Not sure if it's a reality glitch or a ghost in the machine or just some girl, but damned if it didn't creep me out at the time.
First day of PM kindergarten. Wake up at the same time as my older brother and sister in the morning. Find a piece of paper under my pillow. It's a complete shit drawing of a black house and some kids on construction paper. Bring it out to the kitchen. Ask my mum who made it. Oh, it must have been your brother or sister at school today. They haven't gone to school yet, Mum. They must have drawn it yesterday at school then. Today's the first day of school. No response. I asked her like 8 more times. She always ignored me or told me it must have been my sister. Ask my sister and brother later. Neither of them made it. Wonder who made the weird-ass drawing and placed it under my pillow. Now, my siblings don't remember this happening and my mum denies it ever happened but acts creeped out when I ask her. I kept it for years but lost it after my dad died. Not that weird, but still creeps me out. I also have no recollection of anything in my life when I was in 7. I remember everything about kindergarten and 2nd grade, but I can't even remember my 1st grade teacher's name and have no memories from that time frame. It's like that whole chunk of time is just black.
I was in a bad motorbike accident years ago. A couple of years after that, I started to have memory lapses similar to what you guys are calling glitches. Memory lapses was the official explanation. But after some testing, my memory is better than average. For me, the glitches were similar to lost time. A couple of how did I get here moments. Some really strong feelings of déjà vu. The events that led me to seek help was watching things repeat in front of me, like a stuck videotape. Just stuff at work. Watching other people repeat segments of conversations/actions with clients, etc. Then it started to happen randomly in the street, just passers-by sort of thing. It seriously freaked me out. I didn't want to tell anybody. I stopped taking the pain medication I was prescribed, and it stopped. No problem since.
So my friend and I were walking by this creek, and we saw a dude with an orange shirt and blue shorts and a goatee walk from our right side across the creek and stub his toe on a rock. Like 5 minutes later, the exact same thing happened and we were all WTF. So a little later, my friend is all, I wonder what time it is, and I'm all, let's say it was 5:11, and she's like, okay. So then a while later, orange shirt dude walks by again and I'm all, what time is it? And she's all, 5 o'clock. And we're all, wait, what? Then orange shirt dude walks by again. We walk back to my house and are all, I wonder what time it is. So we check and it's 4:30, so we're like, holy shit. We then hear a weird noise coming from outside, so we look down at the creek, which is behind my house, and see ourselves. And we're like, oh shit, what the fuck is happening? And behind us in the creek, we see this dude we don't know walking up behind the creek us with a knife. and orange shirt dude walking in front of us, walking back behind us and fighting off the dude with the knife. Right after we witness this, we hear a knock on my door. It's orange shirt dude. Do we open it? Well, we're curious, so we're all, what the hell, we might as well. And we open the door. Orange shirt dude then speaks. I want you to never speak of what has happened today again. I want you to pretend it never happened, and I don't want you to try and find me. I will see you again. My friend checks the time. 2 o'clock. There's a bird that nests outside my window. It is bright orange and lays blue eggs. It never showed up until after that day.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.